Back to the Dan Cave, and welcome back to another video build series. So this time it's the Fujimi 24th scale Ford GT40 from 1966. So it's going to be the race winning car, so it's a box scheme for this particular boxing from Fujimi. It's a black car with silver stripes, so it was a race winning car in 66. And if you've watched Ford versus Ferrari or Le Mans 66, whichever version of the film you've seen, you will of course know the fabled story that it maybe shouldn't have won. But there we go. It was the race winning car nonetheless. So that's what this video build is going to cover, or at least the first part of it, because we're back to a multi-part format. After a couple of videos that did stuff in single fell sweeps, it's time to get back to a little bit of a multi-part. So it's going to be a relatively short video. I'm going to cover the bodywork prep, paint, prime, decal and 2K stage. So kind of back to some of the formats I've done previously. But because of relatively simple curbside kit, there's not a huge amount of parts for the bodywork. It's probably only going to take about, say, 15 minutes to get that done. But then that's part one done. And then part two will follow up with kind of chassis and running gear type stuff. And maybe get it to its conclusion. You never know. Because I've not done the editing yet, so I don't know either. But certainly part one is going to cover the bodywork. So let's head on over to the bench and have a look at how this went. I'll be back at the end for some final thoughts. So this is the 66 Le Mans winning car of Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon. So it's all the usual stuff. So first up, get the instructions out. Have a look at everything that needs to be body coloured, of which there's not a huge amount in this kit. However, what there is a huge amount of is seam lines on the bodywork. There's also a few little bits of flash around the body as well, which all needs to be dealt with. And rather unusually for me, I'm actually using a marker to mark out any of the seam lines that I can find. So they are pretty bad. There's quite a heavy amount of sanding. So copious amounts of UMP sanding sticks were used in the process. So these do make swift work of these seam lines. Once everything is cleaned up, then probably be the UMP sponge sander as shown here. That'll get rid of most of the heavy scratches because it's quite a used one. And then it's a case of getting the two intakes glued together and then sanding back the seam line on that as well. So hopefully if they've glued together well, there'll be no visible seam line, but we can use a primer coat to actually check if that is the case. Now the car is going to be in black. Normally for black, I'd actually prime in grey, but for some reason I decided to prime in black as well. So it's UMP black primer, shot through the UMP apex at about 30 psi. At least about 30 indicated on my compressor gauge. So as usual for me, it's starting with the wheel arches, just making sure you get inside the arches to make sure there's no white plastic visible on the outside. And then it's a case of slowly building up the first coat, try not to get too much paint down, basically let it go down quite dusty, and that gives a good basis for the subsequent coats. And the UMP black primer will self-level itself anyway. So keep on working my way around, and that's the first coat done. So that'll be followed up with a further 2 coats, which will give me a nice basis to check for, well, A, for any seam lines still visible, and I can already see them on the intakes. So they are still visible after coat 1, but I might as well finish getting all 3 coats down, as I'll only attend to the areas that have visible seam lines. The rest of the primer will stay intact, and I'll just fill in the bits that get corrected in the next stage. So once again, just laying down a nice even coat of UMP primer. So as you can see, I'm moving quite quickly across the kit, but that's kind of standard. So after the 3 coats and it's left to dry, you can see that there's still a bit of a seam line left on those intake trunks on the rear. So I'm going to use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer 500, I think it is. And that's left to cure. And once it's cured, it can be attended to with a UMP sanding sponge. So hopefully that Mr. Surfacer is basically filled in to the recessed gap, I suppose it is, in the 2 parts. Once I'm happy that that's all sanded back smooth, clean off any of the sanding dust, get back over to the spray booth and fill in the bits that were missing any black primer from the first step. So it's easy enough to blend it all back in. Once that's done, that's been cured for about 24 hours, go back in with some X18 semi-gloss black from Tamiya, and that is thinned with Mr. Hobby Aqueous thinners, which I find actually gives a good result with the Tamiya acrylic paints. So again, in for the second coat, going up and down this time to make sure there's no obvious stripes on the car. Making sure I get underneath the car, inside all the intake trunks, in behind the wheels. And 2 coats was sufficient on this occasion because, of course, it was over black primer. So again, that's all left cure for about 24 hours. Once that's cured for 24 hours, it's time to get on with the decals. Now, Fujimi decals are notoriously bad. There's not a lot of them, but they're not brilliant decals. They do have a tendency to break very easily. So plenty of heat and plenty of UMP solutions to gradually soften them. So starting with the normal UMP solution and application of some heat. So let's speed up the footage and stick some background music on. So despite my reservations, the decals have actually gone down absolutely fine. So with that done, it's another 24 hours curing for those decals, and then it's back over to the spray booth to start the 2K process. So once again, I'm using the Gravity Spain 2K in its 3:1:1 mix, and I've mixed up about, I think it's about 4.5 to 1.5 to 1.5. Once again, using the UMP Apex. So this is a different UMP Apex. I do have 3 of them, but I use this one solely for clear coats. Well, specifically for 2K actually. So first coat with Gravity is, of course, the tack coat, kind of like a shiny pebble dash, and that's the, we'll say that's the kind of basic adherence sticky coat. Basically helps all the subsequent layers stick much better and prevent runs. So it's a relatively light coat. You just kind of want a dusting of some shiny material. You're not looking for a hard gloss finish at this stage. And of course, as is usual, you want to make sure you get all the way on to the underside. Make sure you get around any of the decals. Make sure all them edges are well covered as well. So then the second coat is the proper first wet coat. So this is where you're looking for a very good gloss coat. You can get away with some orange peel at this stage, but you are looking pretty much for a proper gloss coat. So again, once the second coat is complete, that'll be put away for 10 to 15 minutes. And then it's on to the third and final coat, which is all about making sure you have no orange peel and as smooth a finish as possible. So you don't need to push it any further than that. And with that third coat completed, this is how it came out. Really pleased with that. So it's back to me for some final thoughts. There we go. That's the Fujimi 66 Ford GT in 24th scale. So I think that's one of the best 2K jobs I've done. Certainly straight out of the gun. Really pleased with how it's come out. Looking back at it, there's a few dust spots in there. That's, I don't know, that's pretty much inevitable, I think, with 2K. But however, very happy with how that bodywork has come out. Decals, not so much. The Fujimi decals are a bit of a struggle. They're possibly even worse than Tamiya's own decals. And if you know what Tamiya's own decals are like, you'll know that these are not entirely brilliant. But however, they went on okay. Seem to have gotten away with any issues with them. So yeah, so really happy with how this build has progressed so far. So hopefully the rest of it will go just as smoothly, and we'll have a nice Ford GT finished at the end. So usual play, if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe link for the channel. And for everyone watching, don't forget to like the video and feel free to leave a comment if you wish. So as it's short content, I'm not going to pad it out for talking for ages. Let's end it there, and I'll see you all in the next video. So thank you for watching, and see you all very soon. Bye bye.